Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Valentina, for inviting me to speak today. It's great to be here amongst many other people interested in big data. As you can see, I have issues with the cliche of big data. I'm from Tableau. I'm not going to talk about Tableau today, but our mission is simple: to help people see and understand their data, whoever those people are. If you do want to talk about Tableau, then I'll be around all day and probably this evening, so come and find me, have a chat. But I want to do a pop quiz just to challenge this notion that big data is something new. So I need you to shout out an answer when you see two quotes. What year were these quotes spoken or written? First quote: millions of dollars are spent each year in the collection of data, with the expectation that the data will automatically cause the correction of the conditions studied. What year? I mean, I know this is going to be a guess. 1950. Thank you for the thing. 1914, 101 years ago, we were collecting millions of dollars, or we were spending millions of dollars collecting data. This came from the Graphic Methods for Presenting Facts. That's the first ever book written on data visualization. And Willard Brinton was annoyed with the terrible charts that were being made in 1914. He was also talking about the fact that if you had punch cards and a Hollerith tabulating machine, yes, you could process 3,000 records per hour. Get that. He had big data. Next quote. This one comes in two parts. One, I think, the first bit we will all relate to. What year? Laborious and tedious as the compilation of this work has been, a variety of views were opening up continuously during the production of it. Any guesses? 400 BC. Thank you for overestimating the thing. The thing I like about this quote, this is finding data's hard, but getting insight out of it is wonderful, right? This is what my case study is going to be about today. Anyway, that was 1765, 250 years ago. Written by Joseph Priestley after he created this, which I think is a completely clear big data project. It shows over 2,500 years on the x-axis, the lifespans of 3,000 people of merit, as he called them. Famous people like philosophers, religious people, soldiers, and politicians. And what Joseph Priestley's intention was with one sweep of the eye, anybody reading this could get a great picture of the vast depth of human endeavor, right? And all he had was a pen and paper, and he was still finding insights out of that data. So I show these because this big data thing that's hitting us in the 21st century is a continuum. Throughout time, we have had data, increasing amounts of it. We've had tools and technology, better and better tools and technology, faster ones. But what that has enabled us to do is always to have ideas and imagination that just are sometimes frustrated by the limits of data and technology. Joseph Priestley suffered from that, or was part of that. Brinton was part of that. And all of you today have data, tools, technology, and ideas and imagination of where that can take us next. And where do I think it takes us next is sort of the case study I want to talk about today. So you've got that data, and to me, getting the insight out of it comes to some of the core beliefs we have at Tableau. And I'll just talk about three of them today. The first one is that it's people who are smart, and computers and technology should augment people's intelligence. At Tableau, we don't think it's right that decisions should be made by machines. We want people to make those decisions and gain those insights using tools that make complex things simple. We don't want to simplify analytics. We want to make it advanced and really detailed, but we need to make it simple to do that stuff. The second core belief we have is that people who know the data should be the ones empowered to ask the questions. And again, this is about trying to get everybody in your organization to be able to ask data-driven questions every single day. Because the more you can put out there, if each person in your organization can make marginal gains by getting better answers from the questions they have day to day, then that scales up to an enterprise and sort of big scale level. That can make a huge difference to your business. And the third one, which I really we're going to look at today, is that flow, flexibility, and freedom are the keys to creative thinking. Visual analytics is about creativity. It's about exploring data. It's about finding things that are hidden in the data that you might not find if you just look at somebody else's charts or just look at somebody else's dashboards. It's about that manipulation, the iterative building up of a picture of data that creates really, really innovative and elaborate visual analytics and data-driven thinking. So what I want to do for the rest of the session is talk about a case study, or show you a case study. And this is about phone metadata. This is something that this is a hot topic. Our government wants to introduce the Snoopers Charter and get telecoms and ISPs to record more data about what we do with our phones and our web usage. And this is a really hot topic. Right, now, in Australia, they've already implemented this law. And the Australian Prime Minister said to the citizens, Australia, don't worry, all we're doing is collecting your billing data. Actually, they're collecting metadata, which isn't the same thing, but we'll allow him that slip. And what insight can we get just from phone metadata? Well, Will Ockenden is a journalist at ABC in Australia, and he did a Freedom of Information request for his own metadata, and then made it available to the world, and it's brilliant data. So what I want to do is show you some of the insights we can get from phone metadata. And now if you scale this up to organizations having access to all this metadata that might stay private, might get leaked, might get used by GCHQ, who knows what's going to happen to this data, but what can we learn just from phone metadata? So this is Tableau desktop, but we're really just trying to explore the data. So what Will did was make his data available. And it's 10,500 interactions between the phone and the cell towers. And what can I find out about Will Ockenden from this data? Well, we can look at when he's using the data. So if we drill into quarter, the week, month, week, and day, we can see we've got data for a year. We've got April 2014 to April 2015. If we look at communication type, I've got internet, phone, and SMS data, and most of it's internet data, so he's obviously using the phone to surf a lot. Interestingly, he only started using the internet on the 24th of September, so I guess Will bought his first smartphone on the 23rd of December. Visually, what's popping out here? Well, there's this massive peak on the 23rd of December. We might look into that in a moment. And there's this odd thing is a sort of visual glitch. If we look at that as a bar, and again, right, if we look at that as a bar, you can see there's a gap in the data that started on the 9th of February. Okay, so what happened there? The phone broken, phone lost, travel, or what? We'll have a look at that as well. So to find out where Will lives and works, let's see if we can do that from the metadata itself. Well, we have the geocoding of the states, the Australian states, and we can see the darker green shows that Will was mostly in New South Wales. You might not be able to read that too well, sorry about that. Let's just look at that. 7,500 interactions were in New South Wales. And if we look at that as a percent of total, we can see that about 72% of Will's interactions were in New South Wales. So I reckon Will lives and works there. Let's see what insight we can get in if we drill further. What we have is the latitude and longitude of every single cell tower. So this is where Will has interacted with the phones at the cell tower level. We can look at size that, and actually put that on color shelf as well. And what I want to do is, so the bigger the circle, the more interactions with a particular cell tower. And if I look at that by the hour, then we're going to get a really interesting thing. Right, so the biggest blobs are in New South Wales. Let's look at New South Wales and see if we can work out where Will lives and works. Clearly, he spends a lot of time in the northern area of Sydney, in the city area, and further in the southern part of the city too. If we work, let's look at when he uses the phone by weekday and by hour of the day too. So let's look at the number of communications again. And this time, instead of looking at it over the whole time, I just want to look at this by weekday. Will uses his phone Tuesday to Thursday the most, and then he's obviously a bit busier at the weekends because he doesn't use it so much on a Sunday. If we look at this as hour of day, so I'm going to make a copy of this sheet. Let's look at it by hour. Now we've got peaks. We've got one peak around 10 a.m., 9 a.m., possibly commuting to work, and then lots of phone usage around 6 p.m. when he gets out of work, we guess. He's a journalist. Let's just call that hour. So we've looked at a few views, and to really get the insight of what we can find out about Will, if we bring all this together on a dashboard, then we can start to ask more questions. So there's the map. Let's look at it by weekday and by hour. Let's just zoom in a little bit closer. Now, I've got 3 views, and this insight in data is about iteratively playing with your data and kind of looking at what works well in other parts of it. So I'm going to say I want to use each of these views to filter each other view and work out which of these concentrated areas is where Will lives and works. So my first assumption to find out where he lives might be Will be at home at the weekends. So if we select the weekends, we're beginning to see this blob appear around the northern beaches of Sydney. So I'm guessing he lives there. If we look at when Will uses the phone and internet during the wee hours of the night, so this is hour of day, so I've selected hour of day, now we get a much bigger concentration. This is pretty much, that's a massive tooltip, where Will lives. He lives in the northern beaches. What I also like about this is the increasing usage of the internet in the small hours of the night as the week progresses. So it kind of looks to me like Saturday night, Sunday morning is when he maybe comes home drunk and, surfs the web on his phone for a little bit before he goes to bed. So Will, I know you like to use your phone late at night. Interesting, at the weekend. So pretty confident this is where he lives. But what about where he works? Well, we could go with the same assumption and say Monday to Friday, what does Will's metadata tell us about where Will is during the week? Nothing conclusive there. What about during the week? What if we filter both, look at the working hours as well? So let's go 9 till 4 o'clock on the work week. Again, still no real visual, no answers popping out to us. So we can try it slightly differently and go, well, if we lasso this area, because if he lives up in the north, he probably works down in this part of the city. So I'm just going to select these circles down in the city area. And the insight we get is Will is there Monday to Friday. So assuming he's a journalist that sticks to regular working hours, that's where Will works. Notice also the peaks in the hour of usage. So he mostly uses in the morning, he's using his phone at work by 9 o'clock. Then he has a lunchtime peak and an evening peak as well. So it looks like Will commutes to work and probably gets to work around 9 o'clock, between 9 and 10. Now, if he gets to work around 9 and 10 when he's working, when does he start work when he's at home? So let's see, I'm going to just take hold of these home areas. These are the cell towers around his house. And also combine that with work week. So when Will is at home during the working week, now look at the peak. The peak's at 10 a.m. So I think Will, when he works at home, starts work an hour later. Do you think that too? Now, what if our bosses had access to our metadata and we said we're working at home today and found out we're starting work a little bit later? But this is the kind of thing we can find out pretty easily. All right, now, down here you can see some other issues, or another blob. Let's see what we can find out about that. I'm going to bring in the first chart we drew to just ask a couple of questions about this gap in the data. We know where he lives. We pretty much know where he works. What about gaps in the data? So here's the original chart. And I want to say, well, what happened around this February to March gap? I'll just keep only that. Whoop. Oh, right. So he left. So the 9th of February was the last day that he was connected to the network before this hour gap. And what we can see is, oops, why did that not zoom in? We can see this really big blob around the airport. Okay, so if I zoom in on the south, what we can see is that Will was actually at the airport at this time. And what can we work out about that? If anybody knows Sydney, you'll know there's an international terminal. That's on this side. And there's a domestic terminal on this side. So most of the time, on the 9th of February, he was at the international terminal. We can see that by the location. But we can also see he was there from 9 till noon. So he checked in, he got to the airport 3 hours before his flight. So even the time of that his phone is communicating to the cell towers indicates possibly when he checked in, right? And you check in, or you get to an airport 3 hours before an international flight. So what we've seen here is that this gap that we can see in the data visually can easily be discovered as an international trip somewhere. Oops. And if we look at what happened on the day he came back, so these are the cell towers Will's phone communicated with on the day he returned. You can see he started the day at the airport and ended the day at home, presumably getting over his jet lag. Let's go back and get everything right. So I think we know where Will lives, where he works, where he travelled, and when he travelled internationally. If we bring in all the states, so now the map now shows activity in Victoria and Tasmania as well. What happened in these other periods? Well, let's see what happened in Victoria. He was there on the 27th, the 28th, and the 29th of March. Weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I don't know what Will was doing, but it was obviously an active weekend because he spent a lot of time using the phone on Friday, but then Saturday and Sunday he barely touched the phone. So we can tell from this metadata that whatever he was doing, it was active, right? He just wasn't using his phone. And then let's look at Tasmania and investigate this peak of internet around the 23rd of December. So we'll just zoom into Tasmania, and it looks like things are concentrated around Hobart. So let me just select these communications with the Hobart cell towers. Oh, and why did you not select? All right, there we go. So the communications with cell towers in Hobart are peaked around the 23rd, around Christmas, right? Now, as somebody who goes and visits his mum and dad at Christmas and sits on the sofa and surfs the internet while my mum looks after me, I'm guessing Will's family lives somewhere between these three cell towers, because the peak time that Will has used the internet, used his phone to surf the internet, was on the 23rd of December. I'm guessing that's where Will's family lives, based just on cell phone metadata. So from that, what have we done? What have I actually done there? I've discovered a whole bunch of stuff about Will. I know from cell phone metadata, when he got a smartphone, where he lives, where he works, where he plays, what time of day he starts work when he's in the office, and what time he starts work when he's at home. I know where his parents live, and I know when he goes on international trips. So what else could we do with 10 more minutes, right? And this key thing I'm trying to show here is all that data we've got, if you can explore it in a visual way, it's not complex, but you can actually get hugely detailed insights out of your data, whatever data it is. And also as a case study, I'm sure we all have opinions about the Snoopers Charter, but when you realize how easy it is to find out things about people just from the data that is going to be stored in the Snoopers Charter, that actually might affect your opinion about whether that's a good thing. What if there is a data leak? What if the spooks get hold of the data and start making conclusions based on that metadata that you might not want them to? I'm not here to express an opinion, but it's certainly something to consider. And that kind of wraps up the case study. If you've got your data, how do you get insights out of it? I think it's through visual analytics, dragging and dropping, because when you're in the flow, and just building views and interacting with data like that, you get creative ideas and huge insights out of your data. So with that, if you want to find out more about Tableau, come and find me. I'm here all day. You can tweet me, reach me at Cotgreave on Twitter. But otherwise, thank you, Valentina, for inviting me, and thank you all. Thank you. Two questions. And I have time for 2 questions. And I will repeat the question. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
It comes back to the point you raised very early in the talk about empowering people who know the data to ask questions on the data. And if they know the data and asking questions of data is a very easy thing to say yes they should, and if they don't know the data they shouldn't. Where do you sit on the grey area in the middle of people who kind of know bits of the data and empowering them to make decisions about the data they know about without giving the opportunity to make the wrong conclusions from data they only kind of know about?
So the question is about how do you allow people who don't quite know the data to be able to make decisions as those who do know the data? First answer would be I trust them. I think we have to. The data is trying to be open, so I think we have to increase our trust of all people. Second thing would be try and give all people access to governed data sources. So you're right. People are right to be nervous about this kind of stuff. So if you can control what data sources they have access to, rather than control the dashboards they can have access to, but say, right, here's our official company marketing data source, and then let them explore that. And then it's a hard work of cultural change about play with the data, make conclusions, let's talk about it, and having lots of conversations. Yeah, that's okay. All right, one more? Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much. Back to Valentina.
Thank you.